Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I found out some interesting historical information, actually confirmation of some things I already knew. I'll give you a historical timeline here. I already talked about the Palestinian problem. Well, what the word Palestinian came from, you have to go back to 135 CE as Common Era, okay? That's approximately 1,700 years ago. But anyway, the Emperor Hadrian, as later known as Hadrian's Curse, he actually brought a general, a Roman general, down from what is Great Britain today, brought it down and to crush a Jewish rebellion that was in process in Jerusalem, destroyed the city, brought down the walls, turned the Temple Mount to a trash heap and all that, and put statues of Zeus and other Greek statues or whatever, de-Judified the entire area to the point they said this area will no longer be known as Judea. It will be known as Syria Philistia, and over a period of time of hundreds of years, 1,000 years, since the Roman Empire controlled all the roads and byways for all the other nations throughout Europe, Asia Minor, and all that area. They also were the master map makers, so they controlled all the maps and all the geography and all the connection points there. So they had the liberty, artistic license, to rename that whole area of Eretz Israel, Syria of Philistia. Well, as in Latin translation and everything else changed over a period of time, with the Anglo-Saxon language growing and everything else. Of course, Syria Philistia, Syria was dropped off. Philistia, which actually came from the Philistine, the cursed enemies of ancient Israel. Philistia became Palestine. So the whole area became Palestine, okay, Palestine. So, by the way, there's no P in Arabic, okay? It's actually pronounced Palestine. So if you are a so-called Palestinian, you actually, in Arabic, it's Palestinian. Palestinian. It's actually, in transliteration, it's spelled with an F. So that makes a ba sound. But anyway. So, the end of World War I, it was around 1916 time frame. In 1917, the Balfour Declaration. Yeah, the Balfour Declaration. Google it, you'll find out. Essentially, the Ottomans were in control of Eretz Israel during that time. They were in control of all the holy sites. They were in control of Jerusalem. The Ottoman Empire, which were the Turks during that time frame. But anyway, in 1917, that was a Balfour Declaration. The British were looking for rationale and business cases to bring the Jews back to the homeland. Yes, because the Jewish diaspora was a problem during the end of World War I. A lot of people were suffering. They were homeless. And of course, the Jews were the most homeless and dispersed and thrown about people around. Them and their Armenians, they shared the same common conflicts with that, with treating as trash and minorities and everything else. But anyway, so the Balfour Declaration was in 1917. 1923, the British, again, they wanted to get rid of the Ottomans out of the area, so they reached an agreement with the Arabs, namely the Hasmonean family. Yeah, the Hasmonean family. They're a royal family that claims they're descendants from Muhammad, the Islamic prophet Muhammad, okay? So they were a royal breed of family of Hasmonean people. They were kings of Iraq, they're kings over Saudi Arabia, Mecca, and Transjordan, yes, was formed. Transjordan, which is actually the East Bank, or Jordan today, was formed during that time frame. But in 1924, President Coolidge, of blessed memory, and I say that, and I'll quantify why I'm saying that, he actually reached an agreement known as the Anglo-American Treaty over Palestine, okay, Eretz Israel, okay. This is primarily Jerusalem, okay. So, and he made a declaration, and it was passed by the Congress. It was not an issue for the Supreme Court during that time in 1924. It was a gesture of goodwill, of peace, and everything else. So So you had the Hasmoneans, the first kings or whatever in Transjordan and Amman in that area. Then you had Jews that have always lived there, Yisrael High. There's always been Jews in that area. So during 1924, the Transjordan was formed, and later on, and I'm going to run the time further in the future. As you know, in 1948, the Hasmoneans were still in place in Transjordan. 1946, Jordan was recognized as an independent nation. Okay, so Jordan, 75% of all the land, all the real estate, some of the most fertile land was stolen from the promise of that the United States government reached for the British and the Arabs during that time, as all that land. You can look at a Bible map going back to King Solomon. Well, all that land was intended for the Jewish people, but because the British government wanted to reach an agreement with the Arabs in power in that area, namely the Hasmonean family, they needed to get the Ottomans out. So they wanted to put a tributary government and Transjordan during that time. So all of this stuff, all these connections, the Jewish people were left as paupers essentially. So in 1946, again, Jordan was formed for the first time ever in history. Incidentally, these were Hasmonean tribal people. But at the same time, there were other Arab people there that were not in with the royal family. They were not in good standing. They were just nomadic people, Arabs, Syrians, some Egyptians thrown in. They were all in there. And around 1946, that became a nation. 1948, British government said, wait a minute, we don't want to forget about the Jewish people. So they gave them a very slim sliver of land there in 1948. Soon after, the Zionists declared independence in 1948, and it was recognized by the United States and Great Britain, and only a few nations did. Of course, the Arab War started, namely the King Hussein, the Abdullah family there's a waged war against Israel, and of course they lost the war, and they and over a period of 1967 going on, they lost all the West Bank, namely Samaria. They lost East Jerusalem. You know the history. I've recapped this several times. What I wanted to point out here is that it's always a historical note that the Hasmonean royal family identified Jordan as Palestine, and Palestine was Jordan, okay? Arabs said this, not Zionist Jews said this. No one else but Arabs said that these Arabs living in the land of Jordan were Palestinians, okay? There are more Palestinian refugee camps in Jordan today and in Lebanon than anywhere in Eretz Israel, okay? Supposedly the Palestinians are living freely in Gaza under their terrorist government of Hamas, okay? So if you ever want to deal with a Muslim living in Eretz Israel that denies the history of Israel, then denies the Temple Mount as being Jewish, as Jerusalem as being a Jewish city, as denying all of our rich history going back 3,500 years ago. Abraham, a blessed memory, was going back about 4,000 years ago. If you talk to them, blog with them on Facebook, YouTube, wherever, remind them that the Hasmoneans, the first Arab people that were actually there, minus the Ottomans, said Jordan was Palestine. So the Palestinians looking for a homeland in 1967, Yasser Arafat, Egyptian born, by the way, he had an Egyptian mother, and Arab father. He was thrown out of Jordan for trying to get a bunch of Palestinians together and install his own independent government there. The Hasmonean king, King Hussein, King Abdullah I, one of these kings was assassinated by a Palestinian just because he went to Temple Mount at the wrong time of the day. They had conflict with them. It was known as the Palestinian Problem before anyone else in the world referred to the Palestinian problem in Israel and blamed the Jews, okay? Back then, if you wanted to blame the Palestinian problem on anyone, It was the Hasmoneans, folks. The Hasmonean, yeah, the king Hussein, King Abdullah I, King Abdullah II, always identified the Palestinian problem. That's why they still don't have a homeland in Jordan. They're living in refugee camps. No one in UN is talking about this, and few people in Europe are even talking about this at all. But I'm talking about this. This is all history. You can check it out yourself. You can Google it. You can go research it. There's graduate level papers written on this. This is just pure history. It has nothing to do with religion. This is history, folks, okay? History, folks. So when you talk about fairness to the Palestinians, what about fairness to the Jews? Going back to 1917, the Balfour Declaration, yeah, when they had 75% of all their land stolen by the Hasmoneans just to win a war with the Ottomans with the British. Okay. All you can do is be angry or laugh it away, but this is history. This is what it is. God bless Israel. God bless Israel. Anyway, take care of yourself, research yourself. History is a beautiful thing, right? And the Jews, the strongest weapon that we can, in our arsenal, is our history. Yes, Baruch Hashem. Take care.